I must have done something because you keep staring at me. Why are you staring at me? She said, maybe it's because you're my brother. And I said, yeah, all Aboriginal people say they're brothers and sisters. She said, no, you are my brother. Your dad and your mum are mine too. And I looked at this woman and I said, I really don't think so. And then she named them. She named my dad and she named my mum. And then I knew that she was telling the truth.
There is rarely a life untouched by hardship or challenge. On this podcast, we invite our guests to share their very personal stories. We harness the wisdom and resilience of our guests, which has shaped who they are today.
Carl Rogers said, that which is most personal is in fact most universal. Together we'll be inspired to embrace the resilience in our own stories and to gain strength in the face of adversity and have a few laughs along the way.
Hi, I'm Donna.
And I'm Di. We are the Double Ds and welcome to the Discovery Diaries.
We acknowledge the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation as the traditional custodians of the land on which we are recording this podcast. We pay our respects to the elders, past and present, and acknowledge their spiritual connection to family and storytelling.
Both Donna and Di were born here on these lands. We are grateful to draw on the culture of telling and sharing stories, and we hope that you will draw inspiration from the stories that are shared here.
This episode includes a discussion about Australia's history of the stolen generation of Aboriginal children. This is an incredibly important topic, but if you feel like it is too much for you to listen to right now or you would like to listen with someone else, please come back to this episode when you feel ready.
In this episode with Steve Cox, Steve actually introduces himself, and so we don't have a traditional bio, but once you hear his story, you'll realise that he doesn't need one. There's many aspects of his life story that we're sure you'll be impacted by. Steve covers stories of racism, sliding door moments that really changed the course of his life, and stories about the stolen generation of Aboriginal children in Australia. We hope that you'll gain as much as we did from listening.
Well, we're very excited to have Steve here today. So I was walking along the coast and kept seeing Steve. I didn't know he was Steve at that point, but I had this voice inside me saying, I've got to go and talk to him. Oh. And it was quite a strong voice, and I did end up thinking that you might be a detective, Steve. But then when I went and spoke to you, you weren't a detective, but I'll let you introduce yourself.
Yeah, for all the listeners out there, the name's Steve Cox. I'm 69 years of age. I hope I give you an interesting story today. Meeting Donna, and I'm pretty pleased that she thought I was a detective because a lot of other people probably think the same thing. I don't know why, because I don't look like one, and I'm far from that. But, it'll be interesting. I was brought up in a country town. Kojonup is my hometown. I'm the youngest one of twins. I have a twin. Don't panic, he's not like me. And I've got a pretty big family. We living from Kojonup. My dad was a white man, and my mum was a full-blooded Noongar woman. Difficulties of living together. We lost our identity growing up, and trying to fit in and where we were going, who we was going to be with, and how our lives were going to be. So in the early parts of our lives, it was pretty difficult and trying to get to know people. I attended a little school in Jingalup, which was our first venturing into an education, and it was just a small school, and moving into Jingalup and getting away and meeting and being and mixing with people, it was a different scene sitting at home and just meeting your own family. And going through Jingalup was closed down, and we moved into Kojonup, and by God, that was scary. It was scary living in Kojonup. But the thing about it is we left the farm. We was brought up on a farm, and my dad got sick, and so we had to leave the farm, and we were put as I'm an Aboriginal person, so we were put on an Aboriginal reserve in Kojonup, and living on the reserve was interesting in itself, but it was scary for us younger ones. Every Friday night we'd be sitting there, and I'd be looking at all these Aboriginal people, and they'd have a big bonfire in the middle of the reserve, and they'd be sitting there. They'd be having their booze, cooking their food on this big fire, singing, guitars going, music going. By God, they were happy. And I couldn't work it out. I just couldn't work it out. How these people all put together on an Aboriginal reserve in tin shacks, and yet they all happy, singing and dancing. I didn't want to be that person. I didn't want to end up like these people. And as life was going on for me, looking around and looking at these people, and this was the most scariest things in times of my life. And when I started to go to school, it was like a safe haven. It was a safe haven for me to get away from the reserve and to try and make myself. I didn't want to be called an Aboriginal. I didn't want that. I didn't want to be people recognising me as an Aboriginal person.
It sounds, Steve, like you didn't feel like you belonged.
I didn't. I actually didn't believe. I didn't feel I belonged. I didn't feel that we should have been living in that reserve. You know, and it's when we were on the farm, we were mixing with the farmers and their kids and playing with them, a different experience. And then I got on the reserve, and living on that reserve, it was like when I got to Kojonup School, you meet friends and you meet people, and we were all a little clingy and scaring, but I made friends with a few white boys, and they used to take me back to their place, and I'd get there and I'd go up to their house, and I couldn't believe the different lifestyle. I couldn't believe that you're living in. It was like living in two different worlds. You got one side, which is Aboriginal people on the Aboriginal reserves, and you got these white people living. They only had asbestos houses, and they only had, just old sort of houses what you'd think of today. And I thought they were castles. I went to these people's place. I couldn't even use a knife and fork. I didn't know what a knife and fork was. We didn't do that. We didn't use knife and forks. I looked at their life. We weren't even allowed to talk to the girls. So I made friends with the boys who had sisters so I could talk.
That sounds like a really crafty plan, Steve.
You always have to find some way to make conversations. But it was I had a friend, and his dad had a boat, and there used to be a big lake near Kojonup, and when I used to go and visit him, they used to take me out on this lake. And I thought I was rich. I had nothing in my pocket, but by God, being with these people, it drove me. It drove me to be a better person.
It sounds like you felt totally accepted with that family, Steve, or was there a number of families? There
were quite a few white boys that I got friends with, and they'd go back, and I wanted to stay with them. Unfortunately, I had to go home. But then they made a decision to move us up the reserve, and they built a house, 3 houses actually, for the big family we had on the other side of town. And you know what? I never went back to that reserve. All my other family did. Everyone else went back to the reserve. I never did.
So, Steve, you said that you've got a very big family. Can you, how many kids were in the family?
Well, we had 10 girls and 10 boys. We had 3 sets of twins. As I already mentioned, I'm a twin. We had 2 sisters. They were identical. Me and my twins not. Thank God for that. And we had another brother who had a twin who passed away at death. So we had that and we were very close. You know, we very, very close family. And when we was going through school, I used to love school. As I said, I was the only Aboriginal kid that did homework. You know, I'm proud to own that I get a prize for that because I'm really proud that I was the only one who did. It got to the stage where I got very, very, very brainy. I was a top kid in school, and that including the white kids as well.
So what was your favourite subject at school?
I really liked math. I was pretty good at math. School was just school. I didn't have a favourite. It was just something that I wanted to be at. I didn't want to go home to the reserve. I didn't want to, and I played hockey. Back in those days, you didn't have Aboriginal people playing hockey. Because I made friends with these white kids, they had me playing hockey. I always thought I was going to be Olympian playing hockey because I was pretty good at it. Until one day it was raining and I got hit in the knee when it was really raining with a hockey stick, and that was the end of my hockey career.
I've still got a few bruises on my shins from hockey, Steve.
I know, and that was it. And then as a young kid, you get doing ventures, as I told you about the kid with the boat, but they also took me down to Bluff Knoll. And, you know, I actually walked to the top of Bluff Knoll.
Oh, I've had a few adventures at Bluff Knoll.
And Bluff Knoll.
It's one of the scariest times of my life.
You know, when you get on the top of Bluff Knoll, they got a book that you could sign. And
yes,
I signed my name because I walked to the top of that back in those days. I didn't have the tracks of today. You had to go, you know, climb that. It was a good feat and it was amazing.
So were you in primary school at this stage still, Steve?
I was still in primary school, yeah. I was only young at that time. It was amazing being in school because, as I said, I found that as a safe haven. But I got a very good education, and I got that good that they were going to send me to the Guildford Grammar. Now I didn't know what Guildford Grammar was. I had no idea. I being an Aboriginal kid in a small town, we didn't have the advantages of what they got today. But it was so close to the stolen generation as well. And for me, I'm thinking they're going to take us kids again. They're going to steal us away. So I turned in to be, I was walking home from school and I had to take some forms home to my mum and dad to sign, to put me in to send me to Guildford Grammar. They're going to give me a scholarship. And I was sitting on a dam and then I realised I had to do some tests to get into Guildford Grammar. And then I realised I hold the key to my destiny, no one else. They're not going to take me away. So I did the test and I failed them, the pre-test. They were a breeze. I could have done it with my eyes closed, but I deliberately failed the test because I was frightened that they were going to take me away, which they were. They were going to send me to Guildford Grammar. Now, if I know what I know today, I would have taken that opportunity. But I didn't know that back in school. We had school races when you're running. We played sports, and in running I'd win races, and the other Aboriginal kids would win races, but we'd never get the trophy. We never ever get the trophy. It'd always go to the white kid. So it was difficult, and growing up like that, you learn to wait. You learn to wait. A young kid winning a race by nearly the length of the straight and don't get a trophy for it. And it's amazing because when Kathy Freeman, I listened to her because it happened to her as well. And you could relate, and this is the way that it was for Aboriginal people. Even today, you know, as I was growing up, and when I didn't get into Guildford Grammar, but I turned in from being a top student to a nobody, because I didn't want to be anything else. I just wanted to be. I used to say to myself, well, I reckon if Aboriginal people have got nothing, well, I'm going to give them that. And that's what happened with me and with my life. I drifted away from all my ambitions and where I was going to be a person who was going to fight the system. And then I didn't have a care in the world. Aboriginal people are so laid back. that we take things as it is, and that's what I did. I started to have eat the booze and drinking. You know, I said, well, if they think we do that, we may as well do it, and that's what I did. I ate the booze, and I was drinking. In all my family, I'm the only one who never married. And that's not because I was Aboriginal. It's just that I never found the right one. By God, I had a good time looking. But
I don't know if I want to hear those stories, Steve.
But it's then growing up. It's you learn. Life is what you make it. At the end, when you get older and you look back on everything I do, I look back on everything I've done, and I look and I can't blame anybody. I find there's a story about I like to tell people. I walked into a pub down in a place called Tambler, and there were 7 of us, and we were all Aboriginal boys, and we walked in. The barman come up to me and he says, I said, give us 7 middies, mate. He come back and he puts one on the bar. And I said to him, obviously something's wrong in your hearing, mate, or something's wrong with your eyes. I said 7. He said, I can't serve the Aboriginal boys in the front bar. He said, he's that bloke sitting over there, he's my boss. And if I serve the Aboriginal boys, he'll fire me. I'm not allowed to serve Aboriginals in the front bar.
This podcast is brought to you by my weekly newsletter, which is Donna's Balcony Views newsletter. This is a short weekly free newsletter that I write with the theme of building resilience and improving wellbeing. It contains 2 things I've experienced, 2 things I've learnt from others, such as speakers, podcasts, books or articles, and a personal story from someone else about what they do for their resilience or their wellbeing.
What I love about your newsletter, Donna, is it's really bite-sized and it's extremely easy to read. In a couple of minutes, I've got some great resources and some little tips that I might try. And I read it this morning again, and it just gave me some idea of what I could focus on, some morning questions and some evening questions, and I'm really enjoying it.
If you would like to sign up for my weekly newsletter, my free weekly newsletter, go to my personal website, which is www.donnasbalconyviews.com.au, or on Instagram at Donna's Balcony Views.
And Steve, what sort of year would have this been? Like approximately what sort of time of
I'm looking back in the early 70s.
Right.
Yeah, early 70s, 73, 74.
So you were allowed in the bar, but not allowed to be served?
No, we weren't allowed in the front bar, but we went into the front bar.
Ah.
So, but we could go out the back and they would have gave us as much as we liked. So anyway, I said to this guy, so that's your boss over there? And he said, yeah. I said, call him over. So he called him over. And I said, mate, you got a policy, you're not serving Aboriginals in your front bar. And he said, yeah, mate. He said, take them out the back. He said, and you could drink as much as you like. I said, oh, is that the case? I said, just watch this. I said, you blokes got $20 on you? I said to the other guys, $20 on you? Put it on the bar. So they all put their $20. I said to the publican, you got $20 on you, mate. He said, what are you doing? I said, bear with me. Go with me. And he takes the $20 and he put it on the bar. And I looked at it and I looked at all the others. I said to the Aboriginal boys, I said, take a look. You're never ever going to see this again. Take a look. The white man has just put a $20 and it's the same as you guys. The $20 is all the same. I said to the publican, mate, you're running a country pub. That $20 just come out of your wallet, just come out of these black fellas' wallet, out of their pants, their pockets. I said, oh, by the way, mate, give me another middy. So he goes and he brings another middy back. And I was talking to him and I grabbed it and I sculled half of the middy and I put it down. I said, okay, sack him. And he said, I'm not going to sack him. I said, sack him. You got a policy. If he serves an Aboriginal in his front bar, you'll get the sack. So sack him. He just served an Aboriginal in your front bar. I didn't see that. I'm Aboriginal, mate. So the thing he said, I'm not going to do that. I said, well, serve us. So we ordered up big and then we end up walking out and telling him to stick it where the sun don't shine. But those are the sort of things that I've run into in my as I was growing up and learning more about what the plight of the Aboriginal people were getting. And my whole attitude changed about I wanted to work for Aboriginal people, and I wanted to be a leader, I suppose, of we don't need to have this rubbish. I talked about it. I was just telling Donna a story about where I got a job in Midland. I was working for a red scheme, they used to call it years ago, where you had to work for the dole sort of scheme it was. And I got a job out there and I was there, there's 20 of us in the group, but I was the only Aboriginal one. And they were going to start a new group, so the boss said to our group, I'm going to pick a leading hand from this group to look after this group because I'll be with the other group. And he said, we got it down to 2 people who's going to be the leading hand. Some guy named Trevor, and he said, Steve Cox. And the next day, he made a decision. He came in and said, congratulations, Steve, you got the job. This guy pops up and said, excuse me. And the boss said, yeah. Excuse me, he said, do you know what you're doing? And he said, yes, I just gave Steve the job as a leading hand. He said, Steve's Aboriginal. He said, so what? He turns around and he says, white people do not work on Aboriginals. White people don't do that. The old group's white. Take a look at the group. Aboriginal people do not rule over white people. I walked over to him, whispered in his ear, they do today. And it's those are sort of things that I see, and I look back and I look over my lifestyle and I look back at little incidents like that.
And I'm really curious, Steve, about that boss that recognised your leadership skills and that man who said, actually, even though it's not normal here, gave you that opportunity because he saw something in you.
Well, I didn't add something to that. At that time, I was coaching a football team. So it was more experience of dealing with more people than me as an Aboriginal person. It was more that I was a football coach, and this guy didn't deal with people, so that's what swung it.
So you had that experience with dealing with people and all different types of people in the football team.
In the football team, yeah, and coaching, and I never actually told you when I was young. I told Donna about this, but when I was young, I was very, very shy, very shy. I used to hide in the bedroom of our home because I didn't want to come out, and it was. For me, I didn't know how I was going to cope in life because I was so shy. And then one day at home, they were having a party. And I walked down into the fridge to get something to eat, but there was all booze in the fridge. So I grabbed 2 bottles of beer and took in the room and drank it. And after drinking it gave me I could feel something happening to me. So I went and got 2 more. And I drank that as well. And the more I drank, the better feeling I got. And all of a sudden, I wasn't that shy man anymore. I was out with them dancing on tables and it brought something in me. And I woke up next day, a bit of an hangover. But I also, what happened last night to Steve? You know, what happened? I've got to try that again. So I tried it again, but I kept on trying it again, and I kept doing it. So my life started to change to the point where I started to rely on alcohol. I started to thinking that I couldn't do anything out without drinking. And I tell people this story simply because they say alcohol is no good for you. It's not the alcohol that's no good for you. It's the person who drinks it when you abuse it. And for me, alcohol brought me out. It brought me out from being a very shy man to who I am today. And it gave me a sense that I ended up coaching footy teams, captaining cricket teams, and standing up and doing this today. You know, it's something I'd never ever dreamed of doing. And I ended up being who I am.
It sounds like at some point you kept the feeling but ditched the alcohol.
Well, yeah, it was. Yeah, I kept the feeling simply because it wouldn't go away. I wouldn't let it go away.
It felt too good.
I didn't want to go back to what I was, and it felt so good. And once I realised that I could still be that same person without the alcohol, that's even better. That was even better.
Steve, you did mention that when you purposely failed the test to get into Guildford Grammar, it wasn't that long, previously the stolen generation. And you did tell me a bit about the stolen generation in relation to your own family. Can you tell that story about the bingo game?
Yeah, it's one of my big things I used to do back in those days. I used to go with the lady I used to be with. We used to go to bingo. Now, I'd never ever wondered why I'd go to bingo, but I did. And
Might have had something to do with the lady did it, Steve.
oh, no, it more to do with winning some money. So I'm sitting there at the bingo, and one of my pet hates is someone staring at you. I just cannot stand that. And there is this lady sitting watching me. Most people would like women looking at them, don't they? But I could. That's one of my pet hates. And this woman was staring at me, and I looked at her. And I was, why is she staring? Why the hell is she staring at me? So half time of the bingo, I got up and I walked over to her, and I said, "Did I steal your husband's shirt?" And she said, "No, you didn't." I said, "I must have done something because you keep staring at me. Why are you staring at me?" She said, "Maybe it's because you're my brother." And I said, "Yeah, all Aboriginal people say they're brothers and sisters." She said, "No, you are my brother. Your dad and your mum are mine too." And I looked at this woman and I said, "I really don't think so." And then she named them. She named my dad and she named my mum. And then I knew that she was telling the truth. I knew that there was something in this. So I went home and I rang my mother and I asked her about this woman. She told me her name. She said, "Yeah, she's your sister. She was taken in a stolen generation." And I didn't even know my sister, my own sister. Unfortunately, she passed away. And I went to her funeral. And when I was sitting in the funeral service, having the funeral service, I looked around the room. And I said to myself, what the hell am I doing? I didn't know what I was doing there because it was like I was sitting at a funeral of strangers. This woman was my sister, and yet it felt that she was a stranger to me. And you lose, I look at my other sisters who are the ones I knew, and I'm thinking I can't work it out. How difficult it is to sit in that room looking at a coffin who is your sister, and you got no feeling for it. And this is what Stolen Generation have done to Aboriginal people.
Do you know how old she was when she was taken?
It was taken before my time, so
But she was young.
She was. Yeah, I was very young. I don't think I was even born when she was taken, and all my older brothers were taken as well, but they came back.
Where were they taken to?
They were taken from our home, and they were taken to a mission. They were put in a mission, and so you got half of your family. I've got another sister who lives in Albany, and she was in the same boat. She was taken away, and I've got no interaction with her. You know, I see her at family funerals, and I see her, and that's about all we got in common. Is just meeting each other, and there's just no. You got no feeling. You got no. I just went numb when I got up and walked out of that service because it was so hard. You know, I'd like to walk into what I wouldn't like it. I don't like to see any funeral, but I've had family members, other family members who passed away where I really lost it, and you feel, you know, and then you look at no funerals are good, but I was thinking at that day when I was there, and it just wasn't right. It wasn't right, but life goes on. You got to, you know, it's so difficult to, like with her children. She had quite a few children, but we don't even have any relationship with them. You know, they're still alive. They're still they're around. And I run into one of them the other day, and I walked straight past her, simply because I didn't know her. You know,
that breaking up of families.
That's what happened, and you don't really, as coming through. The younger one, and watching your own family, you know, I sit and I listen to Aboriginal people, the other side, and the other people talk about all this, and sometimes I sit and think, well, why are they talking like that? This is before it happened to me, before I knew my sisters. It's so difficult that you got no relationship, even with losing her for one, and now that she's got a family, and we got no relationship with them. You know what I mean? And it's you try to talk to them, but you've got nothing in common, nothing to talk about. Brothers and sisters talk about growing up, and you talk about what you did together as kids, and you did this, and you know, and when these sort of things happen to you, it's just so hard to take. I try to overlook things like that, and I think that's when I used to drink a lot. Used to kill all things. When you're drinking, you don't care about anything else. You don't care about yourself, so you got no time for anything else. And I thought to myself, you know, I'll never ever pick up another drink because I've been there and done that. I also felt that when I was drinking, I also still had structure. I can remember laying on the streets. I was on the streets for 6 years, and I used to have a carton of beer with my pillow, and laying there and looking up at the stars, I loved it at the beginning. You know, you got no responsibility, you got nowhere to go. You got money when it comes in, you go and spend. You have 15 other people who's laying on the streets with you. One of them gets paid every day, so there's always someone supplying drink or drugs if you're into drugs. One thing I never did was drugs. I had the common sense, or I suppose the structure I'd like to call it, that I never picked up a drug.
This podcast is brought to you by my business, Coming Up for Air. That's coming up number 4, Air. This is a business which cultivates curiosity, compassion and courage through executive coaching, workshops and leaders' retreats. Donna, you've been to one of my retreats.
Yes, and as a senior leader, I decided to invest in myself and go for a day. It was on the weekend, a full day retreat. I'm so glad I did go. It was just what I needed in my life at that time. We spent time on our own, reflecting on questions that you gave us, Di. We spent time with others there, being creative, which I don't often get the chance to do in everyday life. And my absolute favourite part was spending some time with the horses that were on the property. The horses have such a calming effect, and I just left the retreat feeling completely rejuvenated and had time to think about some important life questions that you don't usually take the time out to think about.
Thanks, Donna, and I didn't pay her to say that. I do run retreats at various times through the year, which are open retreats, ideal for leaders, just as you said, Donna, to get away from the busyness of work and life. And often we don't take this time to invest in ourselves. You can find me on Instagram or at comingup4air.com. And so, Steve, you had about 6 years where you were on the streets. How did you get through that? What was happening that helped you to get into a different place?
Well, it all started with I was laying again in the park and it was raining. Well, I thought it was, but it was only the sprinklers coming on. I'd actually thought it was rain, but it was the sprinklers. And I had to get my booze out of the cardboard box, otherwise it would. But I'm thinking, I said, Steve, there must be a better life than this. And then my sister came down. She found out that I was on the streets and come and pick me up. But it cost her 2 cartons of beer for me to go with her because I didn't want to go with her. So I said to her, give me 2 cartons of beer and I'll come with you. And she did. She gave me she bought me 2 cartons of beer to go with her. But when I got back to their house where she was living, you had to have structure. They got structure in their life. And they had things. It wasn't for me. It wasn't for me. I still wanted to drink and I still wanted to do what I wanted to do. I couldn't live on rules. You know, when you're living with somebody, you got rules. And that wasn't me, so I got up and left. And I went all over the place in West Australia. And then one day and I thought, I've got to get out of this. I just got to get out of it. So I went to Homes West and asked if they could give me accommodation. And they said they couldn't give it to me because I wasn't even on the list. So I told them, that's all right, I could wait 5 years to give me a place, but I'll be sleeping at your front door. So when you come to work tomorrow, jump over me and make me a coffee. You know, if I haven't got a can of beer with me, make me a coffee. So I stayed at the outside of Homes West for about 2 weeks. They got sick of me and they gave me a place. And they gave me a place to get in, and that's changed my lifestyle when I got my own place.
So
and
once you had the security of a home and you had shelter and you had those basic things back in your life, was that part of what helped you to come off the booze, or?
Yeah, so that had a lot to do with it because, again, it's you get to a stage in life where you get sick of doing things and things that's not right for you. Mind you, I look back on my life. I don't regret anything. I don't regret. I hit the booze. I done things. You could only make your life better here. When you hit rock bottom, the only place is up or down into a box. And that didn't scare me because that's what my life, you know. When you find it hard living on the streets and you're living such a tough life, death is the easy way out, and that's your lifesaver, and you know that's where you're going, and so you only got 2 choices: go in a box, or try and go up. Unfortunately, I think I come up. I decided that.
So, what sort of age would you have been by now, Steve? What sort of age are we talking about when you got a home? And
well, I was only thinking about living where I'm living now. It just came up to 2003 is when I moved into that place.
So 20 years.
20 years.
Yeah.
20 years, and I've been off the booze for 15.
Right.
So it's I'm not rich. I haven't got any money, but I got inside of me. I got happiness. I could wake up smiling every day now. You know, I got in my life I got 3 children. When I met this Greek woman, and we had 2 kids, and I couldn't be a father. I didn't know how to be a father because I was drinking too much, and that spoiled everything. You know, you try and do the right thing, think I'm going to look after my children, because when I found out I was going to have a baby, that I thought, well, this is going to be what I'm so proud to be a child. But then I realised I didn't want a baby. I couldn't be a father. As I said, I got a twin brother, Who got married at 18? Who gets married at 18? Honestly. Really. But he got married. He's still with the same woman, and he reared his children up. I envy him. I envy him because what he did. I still got a bit of relationship with my children now, but it's not the same. Mm. We had our 60th birthday together, and we had it in a party in Belmont, at the Belmont Park. And he had all his children there. And I was standing watching him, and one of his young sons picked up was drinking, and I watched him go and take the keys off him and put them in his pocket. And it reminded me of my dad doing the same to my brothers earlier. And it made me feel that I can't do that. My kids are not here. And it make you wonder, and it's not to do with being an Aboriginal or anything. It's just you as a person. And but then again, he'd come to my place and he'd say, by God, you got it made, Steve. He'd come and he said to me, Steve, me and Sue's not talking to me and I'm going to leave her, he said. I said, mate, whatever you did wrong, go home, go and buy some flowers, go and do everything, go and apologise. I said, because, mate, you won't make it out here. Because I knew how hard it was. And I knew what it was. It was difficult.
And Steve, I know that part of your story is that you were a youth worker. Is that right?
I did it for 30 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did youth work. I was one of the founders of the Kenwick Youth Centre back in those years were in the 90s. I met this young girl and she said to me, Steve, would you like to I was working for Peel Youth Program in Mandurah as a youth worker, and I couldn't get on with my boss. My boss was a bloke who did a lot of education in unis and places like that. And I always believe that a good youth worker has to have an experience, a life experience, and you got to be able to understand the kids. And if you've got a university degree is all you're working on, you're no good. And I told my boss that. I told the story about my boss. He came in and he had blood pouring out of his neck. And I said to him, what happened to you? And he picks the phone up and he said, I'm ringing the police. And I grabbed the phone off him and I put it down. I said, what happened? He said, I'm going to ring the police because a young child just put a knife to my neck. It's a danger to the community. I said to him, no, don't call the police. Can I go and talk to this kid? And he said, no, I'm going to ring the police. I said, Ben, do not ring the police. I'll go and talk to this kid. So I goes down and I was talking to this kid. He said, oh, you're from the Peel Youth Program. I just put a knife to the last bloke who was here. And he had a carton of beer. And he had a carton of beer on the table and he says, have a beer with me. I said, I can't, I'm working. I'll get out of my house. So I said to him, okay. So I picked the mobile phone up, rang in and said, I'm finished for the day. Put it back in and I grabbed the carton out of the can out of the carton and I scolded it in front of him. He looked at me and then I grabbed another one and I scolded that. And then I said, I grabbed another one, 3 in a row, scolded him. I said, come on, man, you want to drink? You want to drink that like a man? Do it. Do it with me. Oh, obviously you don't want to drink. You're too slow. If you're going to learn to drink like a man, you've got to drink like I'm drinking. I saved that kid. I took that booze that day. I took that kid under my wing. I put him under my wing and I taught him a little bit about life, how difficult it is out there. Stop blaming people for your problems. Look in the mirror. Take a look at the mirror. Who's causing your problem is the person who's looking back at you. I ran into that kid only about a year ago. He's not a kid now, he's a man. And he had a little wife and he had 3 kids. He's seen me and he come running and he put his hand around me. He said to his, come and meet my family. This man saved my life. He said, I could have been dead now or I could have been in jail. But this man had the time to go and do it. I said, you did it yourself, mate. I was only just there helping you along the way. So it makes me proud that I did that, and I've seen his beautiful little family, and that's what life was all about. And working as a youth worker, when you see something like that, when I started at Kenwick, and I talked to the kids there, one of them would say to me, "Steve, you don't know what it's like to be drunk." I said, "I spilt more than you people drink." I said, and I don't normally spill beer. But I said, "I normally spill more than you drink. You don't know what it's about." And being a role model for Aboriginal kids who look up to you, you know.
Yeah, I'm really interested in that, you know, the role model piece and the difference that makes in all of our lives.
Well,
Steve.
everybody needs a role model. And never mind whether you're black or white, and you look at life in general, we all need somebody to look up to, and you all need you look at.
Did you have anyone in your life, Steve, that was a role model for you?
I used to think all my older brothers were my role model, to the point where the ones I respected the most. They are my people. My dad was a very strong and very disciplined sort of a bloke, and he unfortunately he died when I was 16 at the time. So, but a lot of the times you learn yourself, and when I tried to be, when I was a youth worker, I used to be a role model for kids. I tried to be. I tried to set an example. I remember I met this young kid, and his stepfather kept beating him up because he was a white man. And I went around and I was talking to this young kid, and he was telling me, and he used to get into the bath, and he'd be washing himself, trying to change the colour of his skin with soap. And I was like, "That's disgusting." And I got this young kid and I sat him down. I said, "Be proud of that colour of your skin, man. Be proud of it." You know, I said, "Yeah, that stepfather of yours, he wants to be like you because he's living like in your house. He wants to be a black fellow, but he can't because his skin's too white. And he gets sunburned if he walks out there."
So, Steve, it sounds like you've got lots to be proud of in your life. What is there one thing that, if you were saying to our listeners, that you're really proud of when you look back?
Being proud of something in my life, and I think just looking at my life today to what it has been when I was drinking, I think just giving up drinking. I think because drinking was my life. That was, and if the listeners of Aboriginal people out there, if they're listening to me, by God, if you're a drinker, man, life's a bit bigger out there, mate. It's a lot better without it. So I think that's my biggest achievement. But what I did, I gave up drinking, but I took on gambling, which is worse. So you gamblers out there, think about it too, because I gave that away as well. And those are the two biggest things I did in my life, which were a big part of my life. So if I had to pick a thing in my life that I'm proud of, but those two things, or given those two things up, you know.
Steve, we're so grateful that you've come to yarn with us today and to share. I know there's so many more stories. I wonder if you've got anything finally that you want to share with us.
I do know Steve was quite keen to just sort of share with people just how he felt about the referendum a few months ago about the voice. And I know you were quite keen to sort of just
I'd like to
share your emotions about that, which I know you said it was very difficult for you.
The referendum for me was the voice referendum. Started off as a great idea, and we all sit and we think back. I don't know. I would have loved to have seen it been years, but I think when I was talking to Donna about it, and she said it got too political. And that's exactly what happened. It did get political. It got to a stage where I don't think Aboriginal people, you know, we talk about reconciliation, and reconciliation is a big word. But by God, the voice referendum has given the Aboriginal people a big kick in the guts. And they told the Aboriginal people they didn't want them. And that, to me, is you know, you want I want reconciliation. I want people to mix. I look at Australia Day. I look at you got half of the country celebrating Australia Day. You've got the other half protesting. You can't have this. And with the voice, people say to me they couldn't understand, they didn't get enough information. By God, how hard and how difficult was it to understand that all they wanted to do was form a committee to make recommendations to the government with the problems that Aboriginal people have. We're in 2024 and we're still having these problems. It's for me, there's so many non-Aboriginal people who don't understand Aboriginal people. It's there, and I'm not saying that the people voted because they're racist. I'm not saying that at all. But the other thing is, the most disappointing for me was, it was all of Australia that voted that. It wasn't just, Canberra I think was the only state that didn't vote, but all the other states did. But then I look at what actually happened with the Liberal Party in putting Warren Mundine and Jacinta Price as their leading people, and what white people was looking at the yes and the no, and they're saying, well, how could two Aboriginal people vote no? There must be something wrong with it if two Aboriginal people. When you got Aboriginal people fighting against each other, you will never get anywhere. You'll never get anywhere in life. And that's, unfortunately, that only just doesn't happen in the voice. That happened in part of all Aboriginals. If they don't come up with the idea, it's no good. And that's the downfall. And there was a downfall for people were looking at the TV and they're looking at Mundine and Jacinta Price making comments.
So, Steve, is there any sort of last things that you'd like to people listening to know about Aboriginal people, or anything in particular that you wanted to finish with?
Yeah, to the people, the listeners out there, just stand back and take a look at Aboriginal people. All of them's not bad. They're not bad at all. Some of them is good, some of them's bad. We got bad ones in our race, but everybody's got bad in their race. Give us a go. Just give us a go, and you might find. I just tell this story before I go. I was playing football against this bloke, and he kept calling me a bong and a coon and whatever he could lay his tongue on. And a good Aboriginal is a dead Aboriginal, and this is the things he was saying on the footy field. Well, he was running around. I run around, he picked the ball up and kicked the goal, and the siren went. I looked at the scoreboard and we won by 2 points. So I walked over to him and I said, how does it feel to be beaten by a bong? And what it did, he went in and after the game, I'm sitting in the change rooms taking my boots off, and I looked in and he was walking in and he had 2 cans of beer. And he looked at me and he said, hey, Coxie, can I have a beer with you? A white man bringing a black man a free beer, mate, of course I'll take it. So he came in and he sat with me, and we sat, and I said, mate, you confused me a bit out there. You kept calling me a coon. I went in the supermarket the other day and I picked up a block of cheese and it had coon written on it, and it was yellow, mate. You've got to make your mind up what colour I am. And I also said, you've got to understand us, mate. And you know what? Out of that incident, me and this guy is the best of mates today. And that is a story for Aboriginal people. If you get to know them, you could be friends with them too. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Steve, for coming in today and having the courage to share some of your stories with us.
It's been great to meet you, Steve. And we're really just struck by your humility and your calm presence, just telling your stories. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Donna. Thank you so much for asking me and inviting me. Thank you.
Donna, what's this thing about detective that came out with Steve? What was that all about?
Well, it's just that in my own life, I really need a retired detective to help me.
What, right now in your life?
Yeah, but that's a story for another day. So, but I greatly enjoyed. Even though Steve's not a detective, it was a fantastic story, and I'm so glad I went up to speak to him.
And I'm sure you're quite glad that no one was actually following you.
That's right.